All right, we're here in your office. We're here with Representative Kimberlyn King-Hinds here in Washington, D.C. in your office here at Cannon Hall. First of all, thanks so much for taking some time for us to get together and talk about this today.
Well, thank you for coming out to Washington, D.C. and elevating the concerns of the business community. I think that, I can't be the only one knocking on the door speaking on these issues, and so I thought that it was very critical that folks from back home come and have a one-on-one conversations one-on-one conversations with with the people who have the ability to further elevate the concerns that we're facing.
Well, it was a real eye-opening trip all the way through just to see how much you do and how many appointments that you've got to take and how many steps you got to log in a given day. Between all the places and getting in and finding out how it is, like the interpersonal relationships that really seem to get things done out here. So it's been great for you to walk us through all that and see that in person. And we did a lot of meetings, and we started off on right from the very first day with our friends from the Office of Insular Affairs and
Yes.
Interior.
Well, so the Interior actually has jurisdiction over the insular areas, and so they have direct communications with the federal agencies. And so the way it works actually is that a lot of the concerns that are impacting our, the CNMI or Guam or American Samoa is funneled through the Office of the Interior, and then the Office of the Interior is the direct link between, it's almost like a go-between between the territories and these federal agencies. And so, it was important that we go on record and state the issues that are impacting the CNMI, specifically the tourism industry. I know that the biggest concern right now are the delays with regards to the processing of the EVS TAP. And, we've been trying very hard to get some clear answer as to, where DHS is at with that. And, I hope that through this experience, everybody has situational awareness with regards to the process and the difficulty of just trying to set up these appointments. And so, one of the things that is required as well is that when federal agencies take an action with regards to issues like the EVS TAP, they need to be closely coordinated with the Interior. And so I'm glad that the business community came out here and talked about the real life realities that are happening on the ground with regards to hotel occupancy rates, potential business closures, the reduction in force that we're seeing in the private sector, and just the overall attrition of the economy and how that has had a rippling effect on other businesses, and frankly, just the overall state of the economy and how that will impact the ability of the government itself to be economically self-sustainable.
You mentioned EVS TAP, and that seemed to be like the number one thing, like the big priority for all those meetings. Can you walk us through who we met with and why we picked those kind of folks?
Okay, so different committees have different jurisdictions over different issues, and one of the we met with the chairman of the judiciary, which is Jim Jordan, and I was very grateful that he carved out time for us. I've done these knocks before, just being an average ordinary citizen representing the government, and I know how difficult it is to actually meet with Chairman Jordan. And so, the fact that he actually set aside some time and gave us the time of day to be able to understand the issue, right? Because the judiciary actually has oversight over anything immigration related, and because we are talking about the EVS TAP, it is his committee that has direct oversight over those secretaries and those federal agencies that are implementing these rules and regulations. And so, he's as high as you get within Congress, aside and separate from the Speaker, when it comes to those types of issues. And so we met with him. We've also met with Chairman Nels. Chairman Nels, Troy Nels, is the chairperson for aviation, which is a subcommittee under transportation and infrastructure. And, anything port related, right, specific to aviation goes through his subcommittee. And so, when you're talking about decline in tourism arrivals, obviously it's going to have a direct impact on the ability of the airports to be economically self-sustainable. And so he has a vested interest in ensuring that our ports are able to maintain operational levels. And, he understands the fact that we need customers to be able to make that happen, right? Much like our hotels, who needs tourists to come in and check in, our airports needs these tourists to come and travel through the airports to be able to be economically operational. And so thought, that was a win for all of us, because now we had Chairman Jordan, Judiciary, we had Troy Nels, who is aviation, and pretty soon here we're going to be meeting with Chairman Bruce Westerman, who chairs the House Natural Resources Committee, which has the broad oversight over the insular areas. And so, anything impacting the territories, he has oversight over as the chair of that committee. And so I'm looking forward for the folks to have these conversations with him so that he can elevate these issues as well to the White House. We've also met with the Deputy Director of the White House Intergovernmental Insular Areas person, Christine Glasner. She was incredibly amazing, incredibly receptive, and I'm very encouraged by the willingness, first of all, to meet, but two, just the statements that were made, recognizing how critical this is for our economy. And I think there was also recognition, right, that sometimes there's these broad policy pronouncements that are made, and obviously there are a lot of things that are happening with regards to just the overall immigration conversations here in the United States, and we get lost in that shuffle, right? And what it really takes is getting people to work on elevating the issue so that it can get the attention that it needs. And I'm hopeful, I'm cautiously optimistic that we will soon get some some answers with regards to why the delays are happening, and hopefully we can get those pipelines open again.
Well, it seems like you had some good traction from the folks that you met with. What I thought was really interesting is seeing the interactions that you had with folks, even as simple as passing through the halls and walking through the tunnels and bumping into different representatives from different jurisdictions, having a real quick conversation with them and getting some buy-in from them just in those quick passings.
Yeah, so, I'm one of those people that just never turns off, right? I'm very singularly focused on our issue, and I don't think it's any secret that I'm very deeply committed in finding ways to help, our economy. And it's most of the conversation is like, hey, I'm Kim. I'm from the Marianas. By the way, I need help on this, right? And sometimes you have to do it more than once, more than 2 times, more than 3 times, and as you have heard, I've been called pretty intense because that's kind of all I talk about. I mean, after all, it's really why I'm here, right? I'm here to elevate the voices of the people that are struggling back home. And right now, I have, leaders within the business community who are asking for mercy, who are asking for help, who need immediate relief, and so that's part of the job.
Well, it seems like it's a real all hands on deck. You've got all kinds of folks helping you out, folks who flew out who wanted to engage directly with some of the folks that you're trying to get support from, and EVS TAP is the main one that you're going at right now. Is there any timeline, do you think, before some of these things start, the fruits of these start to show themselves?
Well, I do know that we're going to have other representatives putting pen to paper, right? And when you put pen to paper, now it becomes a part of the public record. And it does make a difference, right? When you have heavy hitters, and the folks that we have spoken to are the heavy hitters of Congress right now. And when you have them chiming in and showing their support, people pay attention. And so, I think that we, in our presentation to them, express the urgency. We had one of our business community members come and express that, we're looking at business closures, right? And so, when you are not just hearing it from your colleague, but you're actually looking, at a person in the eye, and this person, is saying, I'm personally going through this and I need help, right? It becomes a little bit more emotional, and hopefully we can see some movement here shortly.
Well, you've been juggling, just in the past few days since we've been here, all the interactions and the meetings with the folks that came from the CNMI out here, and then meeting with the reps, your colleagues here in the offices, and then doing your other job functions. So you've had other meetings that you have to go to, other committees.
Yeah,
and all that.
Yeah. It's all part of the grind, right? And I think I've shared this, that we have to take every opportunity, seize every moment that we have to meet with other folks. And for example, it's been very difficult to actually schedule a meeting with Senator Lisa Murkowski. We've been trying to get that on the calendar as far back as January, but given her schedule, right, and our schedule, it was very difficult. And so when the opportunity arose this week, that was just something we had to drop everything and go do, right? And so, there are days where you take no break. You don't, you're eating lunch on the go. But, it's part of the grind. It's worth it though, right? I think about, not the title or the position itself. I think about the job as, this is my opportunity to help. And every single interaction and every single relationship that I develop with other people creates opportunities to be able to advance some of these issues that we're dealing with, and hopefully, find some relief. And so I'm really excited that we got to do this week, and that, you were here to be able to see that firsthand. Like today, we had the legislative oversight, and we had the opportunity to have direct conversations and interactions with the VA secretary. And so, one of the things that our vets have been asking for is to get that administrative specialist position filled. And so, I've been knocking on the doors, and I've been, just working with the chairman and his staff to be able to get that filled, right? Because if you heard of the hearing today, what the VA is trying to do is basically, minimize these administrative positions and put more focus on hiring doctors, specialists, people who actually provide direct care. And that position actually was supposed to already have been filled, but because of this right sizing of the VA, that position, I think, was supposed to have been eliminated. And so, it was a fight to be able to justify and to say, hey, when you're talking about jurisdictions like the CNMI, we're talking about just one position, right? That one position is not enough. But, please give that one back and don't eliminate it. And so we were finally successful, and that person is supposed to come on board sometime in June. And so, it doesn't happen overnight because we've been asking for that since our last meeting. I think when I was back in March, when we sat down with our vets, that was one of their immediate asks, and I'm glad that we were able to now say that position is going through the onboarding process, and it's going to be filled within the next couple of weeks.
Well, that's great news for VA. Before we get too far away from the EVS TAP stuff, let's talk about, we've got a meeting coming up here in about another hour and so.
Yeah.
Can you tell us who's that with? And then the other part is, it's a little two-parter, right? So the next one is to go into what EVS TAP is a little bit, and maybe what happened at the beginning of April that really sparked all of this.
Sure. So we, shortly here, we're going to be meeting with Chairman Bruce Westerman, and he is the chairperson for the House Natural Resources Committee. And, that committee has jurisdiction over the insular areas, to include Guam, CNMI, American Samoa, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And so anything related to matters that are impacting the insular areas, that committee has oversight over, right? And typically, they actually hold, hearings once a year where they invite, our governors to come and testify, to, give an update or share the concerns as to matters that are impacting their respective jurisdictions. For us now in the CNMI, we are focusing on trying to, to find out what's happening with the EVS TAP program. And so just a little bit of background, during the last Trump administration, there was some concern about the China visa waiver program, and one of the ways that we meaning the CNMI and the Trump administration decided to address some of those concerns was to create the EVS TAP program, which would add an additional layer of vetting people who were coming in through the China visa waiver program. Before, you can just hop on a plane, right, and come directly, and there's no vetting. But the EVS TAP program actually is that, that layer that does the screening, right? It's not a full-blown visa application. It's a program that allows you only entry into the CNMI as a tourist. One of the concessions that was made when this program was negotiated was that, you were going to go from 45 days to 15 days. So you as a tourist can only stay up to 15 days in the CNMI. Back in April, right before Easter, the folks who were going through the program were experiencing delay in the processing. As a matter of fact, nobody's being processed right now. Their applications are showing as pending. And we have been trying to reach out to DHS. I have spoken personally to the Chief of Staff of Homan, and we've written letters to Ms. Noam, asking what was the status. But if we look at the timeline, this all kind of coincided with President Trump's, executive order on the tariffs, which I think basically, put a pause on all these different activities across the United States. And so we just kind of got lost in the sauce, for lack of better description. And sometimes it takes them some time to be able to review and see which programs they want to keep and which programs they don't want to keep. But it's very important that we come here and that we speak to the administration and we speak to these respective committees about how critical this program is. And if the intent is to phase out this program, well, there needs to be an interim solution, right? Because you can't just turn off the water to basically what looks like a desert landscape at this point with regards to our economy. And so, I'm very grateful that folks from the business community saw the value in having their voices be personally heard by traveling 8,000 miles and to be able to have these meetings and to join me in these conversations.
So when you saw the reactions from your colleagues, when you had those folks in the room with you, do you think it made a real big impact?
I thought it made a significant impact. I thought it made a huge impact, right? Like I said, it's one thing hearing it from me, but it can't just be me saying that this is what's happening on the ground, and hearing it from, firsthand from the frontliners, from the people who are bleeding cash, from the business owner that's struggling to keep their doors open, from the business owner that has laid off a significant number of employees, from the business owner who's saying, hey, I'm getting ready to just close up shop altogether because I can't do this anymore, right? And, basically explaining what the rippling effect that would have on the overall economic landscape. And so, yes, I thought that was very important. And the more people in this, talking about this issue, right? More of our leaders stepping up to the plate and saying that this is a concern, this is important, and this is a critical piece, right? Given the dynamics of our tourism industry, the better the chances are of our issues being addressed sooner rather than later.
So we go through and you do all these meetings, you have all these one-on-ones, you get some commitment from folks that they're going to put pen to paper like you were saying. So your overall feel right now about where things are going based on the amount of momentum you're starting to build?
I'm cautiously optimistic, right? When you have the chairman of, for example, we also met with the chairperson of the Small Business Committee, right? He was incredibly supportive, right? He understands business, and he's in the business of keeping businesses open. And so when you have somebody like that as well throw his support, right? And then you have the chairman of the Aviation Committee and then the Judiciary, right? You have people making phone calls and doing something about it. You have the chairman of the Aviation Committee saying, I know that you may think that this might be a waste of 15 minutes of your life that you might never get back, but I'm a man of action. I'm a doer, and I'm going to take action. I don't take those statements lightly, right? Folks like that here in the Hill, they don't throw those words out just for the fun of it. They say what they mean, and I do know Chairman Nels to be a man of his words, a man of integrity, and I do know that he's already working on it. He's shown us drafts of the letters that he's going to write, basically supporting the program, and not only supporting the EVS TAP program, but requesting that Secretary Duffy addresses the Annex 6 situation, right? Because he sees how critical this is to the CNMI economy, but to the ability of the ports to be economically self-sustainable, right? To be operational. And so I'm optimistic. It may not happen tomorrow, but the job is to keep asking, to keep following up, and to keep putting pressure, and to get more people to be making these asks. And I hope that everybody sees the importance of articulating the needs of the community by putting pen to paper or coming out here and joining me in these knocks.
Well, that pretty much sums up everything that happened. Anything else that you have on the table that you're happy to talk about?
Well, the economy is not the only thing I'm focused on. We're working on a variety of different pieces of legislation. We have a couple of VA bills that we're going to drop and that we're finalizing. I'm sure you know that I recently met with the director of the FBI, and over the course of this past couple of weeks, I've been getting a lot of different people reaching out concerned about accountability and transparency. And so we are also working on legislation that I'm tired of talking about corruption, and I'm tired of talking about that narrative. So I'm going to do something about it. And the way you do something about it is codify requirements that whenever we receive federal funds, that everything must be available for public perusal. And so we're working on that draft legislation, and as soon as we're ready to drop it, I'll share it with the community. But it's time to do more than just talking about these issues. It's time to actually do something about it, and I'm in a position now to do something about it. I'm tired of talking about corruption, so I'm going to legislate, right, in terms of requiring any agency who receives federal funds to disclose the contracting process and the expenditures of those federal funds from beginning to end. And so I'm actually excited about that. You got to walk it like you talk it. And so, we're working with a lot of things right now. Looking forward to also bringing out a group of our lawmakers out to the CNMI sometimes near in the future. We're working on Codel's. Sometimes it's just better, it's better to have people to see the CNMI than just talking about it. And so I'm excited about that. So, just a lot of work in the pipeline. But I'm also looking forward to heading home here this weekend. I'm doing some district work, and I'm also going to be the commencement speaker for this year's NMC graduation, which I'm really excited about because, being the commencement speaker, being invited to be the commencement speaker for NMC is like winning the Nobel Peace Prize, right? Like you can't get any higher than that, right? In terms of back home, and to be asked this early on is a great honor. And so looking forward to that too.
Hey, you said early on you felt like that this position was, you also have to be an educator to let people know about where the heck we are, who we are, and what we do, and all that. But really just watching you walk through the hallways, people know where you're from now. People know who you are and what's going on here. You feel like you're getting ahead of that curve where you can really start leaning into all the heavy stuff?
Yeah, I do, right? And, I think that coming from where we come from, Brad, right? When you come from the Marianas, right, we have a certain vibe, right? And our vibe basically is that Hoffaday spirit, right? And you see it when, like we welcome visitors, right? We're just that kind. And when you're here, right, you exude that same spirit. And so, too often, right, like people walk through these halls and they just look down, or they're just super engaged in whatever their thoughts are. But I try to make it a point to reach out and say hello, and consistently do that, make the eye contact. And, after a while, people will start recognizing you, because I'm the kind who's going to wave and be like, hey, how's it going? And, if you do that often enough, people start knowing who you are. And honestly, the other thing is, man, I talk about the Northern Marianas all day long. That's all I do. Anybody who will give me a time of day, because that's literally what I'm here for, and I have no other life than that. And I'm here for it.
All right, any last message to the community?
Hey, listen, hang in there. Let's move forward. Let's keep pushing. Let's keep working hard. Let's keep focusing on the future. I know times are tough, but there's a lot of people who are rooting for us. There's a lot of people who are working behind the scenes to try to figure out how we are going to, not only get our tourism industry revitalized, but also look at other areas of opportunities to diversify our economy. And those conversations are happening now, specifically with the Trump administration. That's something that I'm deeply committed to. Because as I've stated before, our economy is strongest when we have the tourism industry and something else. And so although you hear me only talking about the tourism industry, it doesn't mean that we're not talking about a whole bunch of other things to be able to ensure that we have a thriving economy.
Kimberlyn King-Hinds, our Congresswoman in the United States House of Representatives, thank you so much for your time in the past few days and just now.
Thank you so much, Brett.